and on scholarship. I'm a distance runner. So I ran the long distance, I ran the cross country, I ran the mile run, I ran the half mile run, so I came home after the first year, and my high school buddy, John Bellinger, who actually was a fighter pilot in the Iraq War. I mean, he was in Top Gun. He's awesome, just a great dude. But anyway, he's my best friend in high school, and he came over to the house, and he said, glad to have you back. He said, I want to show you something called karate. Now, this is early in the 70s. We go out in the yard, and I said, well, what are you talking about? And he goes, throw a punch at me. And I feel kind of easy not knowing what was coming. And he did a side kick and then a round kick, and I was going, just really knocking the piss out of me, just to be honest. So I went, what in the world is this? And he said, I want you to come with me tomorrow night. I want you to meet my instructor. So get this, I get in the car with him. We drive down. I walk in. I watched two people spar for the first time in my life. Now, this is early 70s. Gear hadn't been invented yet. And I watched a little guy, Joe Fracaveri, fighting a taller guy. Joe still today is one of my good friends. And he's like a green belt at the time. So anyway, I couldn't believe that small guy was handling that bigger guy. So then John Bellinger brings John Roper over. He's a Korean, brings the instructor over and introduces me to him. And the guy's just a badass Korean instructor. I mean, just the stories about him you couldn't believe. I mean, he's awesome, so talented. And we talked for about 5 minutes. He says, I'd like to see you. John speaks highly of you. I'd like you to come and participate. So I go home. I tell my dad and my mom I'm dropping my track scholarship. I call my coach up in Charleston and tell him I'm dropping my track scholarship. I made that decision the very first night, went and then enrolled in the University of South Carolina, got accepted, and joined because it was a university course that they were teaching karate. It was on campus. I changed colleges and started taking it right after meeting the instructor for the very first time.
Love at first sight or first kick or punch. And again, listen, guys, again, and this is just to make sure, and from an editing standpoint, there's a good possibility that sometimes you do mistakes. I'm not sure if I merged in, I got the introductory right, so we're going to take two, quiet on the set, speed, we got action. All right, this is Grandmaster Jerry Fast Response, and again, the person you're listening to right now is one of the best fighters of all time, national champion 3 years in a row, a gentleman who was an inspiration to me. Not only did I learn techniques from reading his book, but I had an opportunity to become one of the people he coached in 1988. And he was in the movie Meals on Wheels and a whole bunch of other movies with Jackie Chan and Benedict Jetokidis. So the person who just gave me that information right now in the story is none other than Keith Vitali, who recently, him and I and Master Joe Corley were even breaking sweat together. Yes, we were working out. So your inspiration was getting your butt beat to the point where you say, I'm changing colleges. That's an incredible story. Now, where does Mr. John Roper come into this play? Because what I remember was reading that he was your instructor also.
That he was who?
Your instructor, right? John Roper?
Yeah, John Roper. And what was the question about him?
Well, I mean, you're mentioning, is this the gentleman that actually was throwing the kicks at you? Or was he?
Oh, no. Actually, he wasn't. He just actually spoke to me, and we didn't spar or do anything. I just kind of watched that very first night. But he gave me inspiration. He gave me hope. He told me if I came to the class, he could teach me how to defend myself. He could show me how to do the techniques I was watching. And sometimes hope is in being inspired is what moves mountains. And it was just him reaching out to me, inviting me into the South Carolina program. And I said, that's what I want. Besides, running cross country, running track, is very hard. I was very good at it, and I was gifted. It was nothing I developed. I didn't train for years. I just could run the very first time. I broke school records the very first day I ever ran. I set records, my whole life, but I didn't like running. I just could do it. I had good cardiovascular. My very first year ever running, I never, ever got a cramp.
Well, I think that might have helped you with the streaking. Anyway, we're going to keep it a family show. So what I want to find out is, how long was it before you started to actually look at the top competitors? You also mentioned one story about Mr. Corley fighting your instructor. Let's see how that came about. I
was just a white belt, and I remember just being in awe of all black belts. But one of the things my black belt instructor, John Roper, told me, the day he promoted me black belt, he said, I'm going to tell you something you're not going to believe. Now, when you're an underbelt, every black belt's the best in the whole world. He goes, Keith, I'm going to tell you something I want you to grasp. I said, what's that? He says, only 10% of all black belts are any good. 90% are terrible. And I thought, I couldn't even believe those words coming out of his mouth. I went, oh, no, all black belts are fantastic. Now, that was then. That was in the early 70s, 71. Imagine today, if he thought only 10% was good back then, because back then they were badasses. Back then, no gear. I mean, it was really, they weren't as talented as the black belts today, but they were definitely much harder and tougher and seasoned.
Hey, let's give some shout out to some of those people that you are talking about.
Well, let me tell you, one of the first ones that inspired me. I saw Joe Corley again. He handled my instructor. I remember Dojine Kim. He was the son of Dojine Kim in Atlanta. He was really good. And then, these were people that I had a chance to work out with. But what really changed me was when I was an underbelt. I was a white belt. A guy named Andy Seltzer watched me fight in the tournament. And I was in a tournament. I did a jump back kick. I caught a guy in the head and got disqualified. This guy, Andy Seltzer, who was a phenomenal Southern fighter, just incredible, he came over to me and he said, that's a great kick for a white belt doing that jump back kick. And I said, well, thank you. And we talked a little bit, and he goes, I'd like to start training a little bit. He worked at a local gym, so at 12 o'clock at night, we would open up the gym, move the weights, and then he would start working with me. And, jump spinning kicks, taught me how to do, angular movement and all this really sharp stuff, and I'm only a white belt. Now, remember, I stayed a white belt 1 year and 3 months. 1 year, 3 months, because my instructor was he was just tough. He was a badass. He didn't believe in promoting anybody. And out of all the thousands of people he taught, I believe he only gave 2 black belts out. John Bellinger and myself, there might be one more that I don't know about. But there's only 2 out of the thousands and thousands of people. He just didn't believe in promoting people. And but I just remember there were such good Southern fighters. And as I was coming up in my rank, I started being introduced to good people like Bruce Brucci and then Mike Geneva. And then when I met Mike Geneva, it was Howard Vanderbeek. But when I met Mike Geneva, it just changed. We clicked. We were underbelts together, and we kind of grew together. Now we're in 2 separate schools. He's with Ronnie Barcoot. I'm at the University of South Carolina under Roper. But then we had Pete Manchi, Bruce Brucci, who was just fantastic, Andy Seltzer, Howard Vanderbeek. And these guys started working with me. And then I remember one day I won a few tournaments and only going to, because in Taekwondo you can only go to closed tournaments. And then Pete Manchi came to me and he said, I'd like you to go to the Bout of Atlanta. And so I said, what's the Bout of Atlanta? He says, just drive with us on the Saturday. We'll all go together. There's Mike Geneva and a bunch of my little brother Steve went. And so we go down and we go into the Georgia Tech Coliseum, and there's literally thousands and thousands of people. I mean, I'm used to tournaments where we might have 400 or 500 people, but not seeing thousands of them. And there's over like 70, 80, 90 people in my division. And so, I don't know anything. I'm brand new. I've never even seen all these other people from all these other styles. I've only known Taekwondo. So I enter my first contest, and I'm fighting an Ernie Radar student. And he starts to whip my fanny so quickly. I'm down 4-0. He was tough, just tough. And in about 10 seconds to go, somebody that said 10 seconds, I did a jump spinning back hook kick, caught him in the head. Back then, that one tournament, you got 4 points. 4 points for doing jump spinning kick. I tied him up after losing almost the entire match. So now it's tied 4-4. I kick him in the head. My next move, I win. Well, I fight 8 times. And at the end of 8 times, a guy walks over to me and he goes, I'm getting ready to fight for the finals against Bobby Tucker. And he said, do you know who you've beaten today? And I went, no. You had no idea. He pulled up a magazine. It was the old Pro magazine. And in there, he lists the top 10 and he goes, you beat 4 of the top 10 in the nation today in your tournament. My very first one, I went, oh, my gosh. Now, if I had known who they were, Ken Dallas, Larry Callahan, there's a bunch of them. If I had known them, I probably would just ran the whole time. But not knowing who they were, I just treated him like anybody else. So my very first tournament, I beat 4 of the top 10 in the nation, and then lost to Bobby Tucker in the finals that night.
That is hilarious, and that's exactly right. When you don't know that you don't know, unconscious incompetency, in this situation, ignorance was bliss. I mean, maybe if he would have told you that, you probably would have beat Bobby Tucker, too.
You know, you're right. But Bobby was a cocky, he's my best friend. I love him to death. But then he was as cocky as he can be because he had already won 50 tournaments, my very first national one. And I didn't even know anything about it, but he's so fast. He was so dynamic. And he was seeded. So he didn't fight the 8 fights I fought. He just came right in to fight me in the finals.
Now, what year was this?
I would imagine 76, 77, something like that.
And the promoter was still Mr. Corley himself, correct? This is probably after Corley. This is probably after Corley fought against Bill Wallace, and he is the promoter.
Way before then. Way before then. He didn't fight them until the 80s. That's 10 years later when he fought Wallace.
Well, he fought Wallace in 75, and then he fought him in 85. So maybe the second fight. And remember, the first in 1974 was the first PK fights over there on ABC, and then the following year in 75 was when Wallace fought against Corley, and then 10 years after they did it again. But
I don't think so. I was at both of his fights when he fought Wallace. And both of those when I was already in Atlanta at the time, so I didn't move to Atlanta until 77. So he didn't fight Wallace till maybe the first one in probably 80. I'd say 82.
Well, we'll put this as a side note. So did you go? You went to the Battle of Atlanta. Now I remember you also, if I remember correct, reading where maybe you and Jennifer went to California to the Long Beach International or something before you were black belt. So I don't know. I'm just trying to get my I've been hit a few times too. So
yeah. Well, what happened was Joe Corley. I was working for Joe Corley. It was about 70. I think it was 78, and I heard about the internationals. You know, everything. This is before we had the national tournament circuit. And so here's the internationals, and Corley's flying up there, and they invited me to come with my student, Charles Fears. During the day, Charles Fears was a brown belt. He was up 3-0 against Nasty Anderson when he was a brown belt. And then he lost to Nasty in the finals. But he was whipping. I mean, he was just all over Nasty Anderson. And then I was so excited because the ratings had come out the year before, but it was the first year we had ratings because, remember, all the big guys all went full contact. 2 years, there was no ratings, there was no circuit, there was nothing. Everybody fought regionally, and there was regional ratings. So I was rated regionally, but the first year they came out with the national ratings, it was in Blackball magazine, and the top 10, but it was alphabetically. Dan Anderson's 1, I'm 10. So I open it up. It's a shock. I remember being at the bookstore, and I'm so excited. Probably, the first time you just can imagine being rated. I was so excited. Then here's my personality. I went, who's Dan Anderson, and why is he rated number 1? Oh, hell no. There's no way he should be 1 if he hadn't beat me. I don't mind being 10 if the other 9 can beat me. But I didn't like alphabetical ratings at all. So when I found out all these top 10 guys are going to be at the tournament international, I couldn't wait to go. So there's Dan Anderson. I finally meet him. And we haven't even started the tournament. People are just warming up. He knows who I am. I know who he is. We're so excited. He goes, Dan looks at me and he goes, you want to fight? I go, we might not fight later. Let's do it right now. And so we get it on, and we're just going back and forth. And I just remember I did a jump-away sidekick and caught him square in the chest. You would have thought it was my birthday. He was so excited. He started clapping and yelling and going, oh, my God, did you see what you just did? And he was like a kid in a candy store. I've never seen that. Show me that again. Oh, my God. He had never seen a jump-away sidekick before because everybody was just...
We're talking about Super Dan Anderson from, I believe, Oregon at the time, and he had a lot of curly hair, and one of the people that they say, Vitali, again, I'm reading from the magazine, Vitali and Anderson were probably close to each other in terms of the way they fought, stature and kicks and height and maybe even weight, huh?
We were twins. We looked at each other, not facially, but the way we could kick left leg, right leg, I mean, it was just incredible. Bobby Tucker and I were the same weight, but I had much longer legs than Bobby. Bobby had longer arms. But Dan Anderson and I, we were like mirrors. Everything we did, we went, you look just like us. it was like, and another guy, Larry Carnahan, was the same way. We all fought alike and looked alike. You had the same kind of techniques. But Dan Anderson was just so sharp. We were working out, and I'm telling you, at that tournament, we became great friends. He to this day, he still talks about the jump weight sidekick I hit him with, and he just showed him a whole new technique, because back then there were standstill fighters. Yeah, and I was already moving around, so I was a little ahead of the game. And I lost my first fight. Dan lost his. We all lost our first fights.
Who ended up winning that? My gosh. Who ended up winning the event?
I don't even know who it was.
Holy.
All I know is all the fighters got together, and we just worked out together. Geneva worked out with Anderson. If you were there, we got in a circle, and we just were like overwhelmed by meeting everybody. It was really sharp.
Sounds like fun. Sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, so it gave me some exposure. I saw what it was like. I saw who were some of the top fighters, and then I said, believe it or not, I got with Mike Geneva, and I said, this is a true story. I've been beaten by Bobby Tucker. Bobby was always seated. He's too fast. And so I lost my first, 10 fights against him. That's 10 second places. So we went to hey, Jerry, there's a feedback. I'm hearing everything 3 times.
Yeah, I don't know what's happening. Let's see. Okay. Now, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to cut this, and sir, if you call into that line, I would love it, because I know you're in bed, but you're also awake, so just call into that line, and then we'll record it from there. Is that okay?
Okay. All right, thanks. Bye-bye.